Thank you, friends, for joining me for this week-long journey. We discovered the brain to be peopled by a motley crew, from a cook to a timekeeper, and countering the idea that the mind is its own place, a smoke detector which is hypersensitive to external things. But we also encountered the potential of cultivating an inner relationship between parts of the brain, specifically the smoke detector and the watchtower. In a couple of weeks, we'll return to Bessel for a week called Scoring a Symphony. And we'll encounter the idea that beyond all of those parts, there is an essential self, which is waiting in the wings, doesn't need to be cultivated or developed, ready to be an orchestra conductor. I considered going straight into that, but we're going to stick with the plan, announced yesterday, of A Tale of Two Frogs, reassured by the synchronicity that this little dude showed up on my doorstep this morning. It's good timing. Hello friends, you may recognise this is where I was sat when I made the commentary part of that Wim Hof video that I shared yesterday. I filmed that maybe 4 hours ago and I'm still sat here now as the video encodes painfully slowly on this old laptop because my MacBook broke yesterday. So I'm using the resources that I have to try to just keep momentum. Which makes me feel a bit like the second frog in the two stories I'm about to tell. I think most of us know this first frog, the frog in the boiling water. It's been swimming for a long time, it doesn't sense the danger that's building, it ends up dead. And the second frog, slightly more hopeful story, is also swimming. It thinks it is going to die. It's jumped into a pail of milk and has become trapped. It wanted to drink milk. It keeps on swimming, it seems futile. And then eventually, when it's just as it's going to give up, it's churned some butter, jumps on the butter, hops out. Do you relate to either or both of those frogs? These next 3 days tell a story, In the Pail, by Jeff Olson. Two frogs left the safety of their swamp one day and ventured into a nearby farm to explore. Soon they found themselves in a dairy, where they found a large milk pail. Hopping into the pail, they found it was half filled with fresh cream. The two little frogs were absolutely thrilled. They had never tasted anything so delicious. Soon their bellies were full. Feeling sleepy, they decided it was time to leave, and that's when they realized they were in trouble. They'd had no trouble hopping in, but how were they going to get out? The inside of the pail was too slippery to climb, and because they couldn't reach the bottom, and there was nothing for them to step on for traction, hopping to safety was out of the question too. They were trapped. In the Pail, part 2 of 3. Frantic, they began thrashing about, their feet scrabbling for a foothold on the elusive, slippery curve of the pail's sides. Finally, one frog cried out, "It's no use, we're doomed." "No," the other frog gasped, "we can't give up. When we were tadpoles, could we have dreamed that some day we would emerge from the water and hop about on land? Swim on, brother, and pray for a miracle." But the first frog only eyed his brother sadly. "There are no miracles in the life of a frog," he croaked. "Farewell." And he sank slowly out of sight. The second frog refused to give up. He continued paddling in the same tiny circle over and over, hoping against hope for a miracle. An hour later, he was still paddling in his futile little circle. He no longer even knew why. In the Pail, part 3 of 3. His brother's dying words clutched at his thoughts as fatigue tugged at his tiny muscles. Was my brother right? He thought desperately. Are there no miracles in the life of a frog? Finally, he could swim no more. With a whimper of anguish, he stopped paddling and let go, ready to face his fate. Yet to his surprise, unlike his brother, the second frog did not sink. In fact, he stayed right where he was, as if suspended in mid-air. He stretched out a foot tentatively and felt it touch something solid. He heaved a big sigh, said a silent farewell to his poor departed brother frog, then scrambled up onto the top of the big lump of butter he had just churned, hopped out of the pail and off toward his home in the swamp.